So the other day, I just picked up my phone and I randomly started speaking into my phone, like as a voice memo. I don't know. It was sort of like just to gather my thoughts. One day after I was just, thinking and pondering and trying to understand our Blessed Mary's role in I don't know, in society on this earth and how she still intercedes and how powerful she is. Anyway, it turned into like sort of a 50-minute long spiel. And so I thought, well, I might as well make this into an episode. So, I mean, in hearing this, if you're not Christian, if you're Christian and, maybe you're Protestant and, or any other faith rather than Catholic, our Blessed Mary Virgin probably hasn't had a huge impact on you or your life. But when I started to understand like how much we can use her to intercede in our prayers and what a great model she is for how a woman should show up, how we as wives should show up in our marriages. She makes for the most excellent guide in so many ways. And so I talk a little bit about Adam and Eve, as they were the first husband and wife on this earth, and how they kind of messed things up. Mary and Joseph sort of made up for that, and they are the most excellent example of how a man and a woman should be in a marriage. But it's mostly about Mary and how her often her I don't know, her humility just really stands out, and her love. So, yeah, if you're a mother, if you're not even anybody of faith, like I think it's going to help you just sort of maybe, I don't know, have a new lens on what a woman should be, for lack of any other better way of explaining it. So, yeah, because it's a voice memo, there's no video. So don't bother trying to watch this on YouTube. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. Okay, on with the show. Dishonesty, disrespectful, discrimination, detached, dismissive. That's it. I'm done. Relationships can be messy. Are you having trouble with your personal or professional relationship? Not to worry. As a relationship therapist and coach for over 25 years, I have a lot to share. And so will my guest experts. Let's get smarter in our business and personal lives so we can be our best selves. Now, let's get on with the show. Today, I want to speak to you about something that I think has been, stirring in my heart for a long, long time. It's time I really speak about it out loud, even though I don't want controversy. Like, I'm not one to spur on any sort of controversy. Yeah, and that, in fact, that's one of the reasons why my marriage has gone through some really troubling times, because of that unwillingness to face conflict. It's kind of synonymous with my unwillingness to see evil in the world. Like, I think I was born the type of girl or woman that just wanted everyone to be happy. And I think, it's made me realize that I like to think that I was always very obedient to my parents, because I just wanted them to be happy. Like, I just want people to be happy. I don't want conflict. I want peace. If there was a message that I would hear most often from women, it would be that I just want peace in my life. It's such a strong message, And so who better to emulate this message than our Mother Mary? It's probably not what you thought I was going to say. Maybe some, I don't know, other powerful woman icon out there right now in 2025. But the most powerful woman that any of us will ever set our eyes on is our Mother Mary. Now, bear with me. If you're not religious, if you're not Catholic, you're going to find some benefit in listening to me right now, because it's what our society is really lacking. And especially with the women empowerment movement and the feminist movement, it's unfortunately that women have stepped out of the virtue of humility. And we've adopted this mindset of independence and individualism and what's best for me, not what's best for my family or my children or the greater good of society, but what's best for me. And hey, I'm not saying it's only women. Obviously, as a society, we've concaved in towards ourselves and have become very, very selfish. So it's not just women, but I think it's what this has done to women and how this has affected our society. That's what I want to talk to you about today. If you haven't heard me speak before, I just want to say I was raised Catholic, but I wasn't taught scripture very well. I wasn't taught to read the Bible. In fact, I think I remember seeing a Bible in our house, but I never saw my parents read a Bible. And I know none of my siblings, I would say. And catechism classes, yeah, I guess, maybe, I don't know. Even though I was more or less raised by nuns, yeah, I don't know why, but it doesn't really matter. The only reason I say that right now is because there's certain scriptures now that are part of the scripture that I will hear and I get confused, in terms of what does this actually mean? Come in, Ruby. My dog needs to come in. And this is one of them, is in scripture, Genesis, what is it now? Genesis 3:15, where, God speaks not just of Eve's fall, but of a woman who would come to crush the head of Satan. There was a particular, let's see, what was the actual verse? Oh yeah, okay, so I will put enmity between you and the woman. This is after the fall of Eve, where original sin originated, where Eve took fruit, the apple, and when it was the forbidden fruit. And so in the fall of man, when God spoke and said, I will put enmity between you and the woman, speaking to Satan, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall strike his heel. And I needed to look that up because I was like, I don't know what that means. I could have went to my priest or whatever, but hey, that's effort. Why don't I just look it up on the internet? And that's what I did. So what it means for you, of those of you that are interested, is that this verse is basically seen as the first hint of salvation that we have through Christ, with Mary as the woman whose seed, aka child, aka Jesus, defeats Satan. So in other words, what this verse is saying is God is speaking to Satan, and basically, I don't know, just to make things all straight again after, taking the forbidden fruit and seeing this now as, this is going to be every person now born will have original sin because of this. But to set things straight, God says to Satan, kind of just so you know, just so you're sure that, God's kingdom will reign until eternity. He's saying to Satan, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman. So between your seed and her seed, meaning any sort of acts that he will do, and upon Jesus, which is her seed. And Jesus, my son, will crush your head, and you shall merely strike his heel. In other words, yes, he will have died a horrible death, but that's still nothing compared to what he's going to do towards you. And the world will be redeemed once again. So, I mean, I just love it. Like, I love it. It's sort of like, I feel like if I was, someone on the sidelines listening to God, I'd be like, yeah, you tell him, you go for it, you put him straight. And it's like we would all be cheering on the sidelines, I think, if we were present in the Garden of Eve. So, yeah, this is just, and Mary is the new Eve. So this is how you have to see Mary coming into the picture here. She's the new Eve. The old Eve, yeah, man, I guess she messed it up, And I do also see this as being really interesting portrayal of the differences between a man and a woman, where this happened to Eve. It didn't happen to Adam where the temptation took place. It happened to Eve. And I think this really symbolizes a woman really well. Not that, she's the cause of all trouble, but more that Satan played upon her emotional fragility, if you want to call it that. A woman is fragile in many, many different ways, but it's because of her depth of emotions, her depth of her heart, her compassion towards a fellow man, like toward another individual, and knew to play on that. Whereas Adam might have used more of a rational, logical, mathematical way of, figuring this out. It's sort of like, whoa, yeah, I'm tempted, but wait a minute here. I think God said something like, you can take part in all my beautiful garden, but just not this one. So why wouldn't I just go over and grab a peach from that other tree or something like that? I could see Adam sort of coming at it like with some more rational thought, whereas, Eve thought, wow, I could be like God? Like, I could actually be like God? And, she let her emotion, influence her decision, she wasn't able to see the forest for the trees anymore. She wasn't able to see the big picture, whereas Adam was. And just to give you an example of where this would play, in a marriage, for example, because I did this, I was very weak with my emotion in many ways, and it did not help my marriage at all. For example, I remember if one of the kids would come home from school and they would be super tired, and, I could see it in their eyes, and they just wanted to veg for the night. But then there was a soccer practice, and not only was there a soccer practice, but it was pouring rain. But there was no lightning, so it wasn't called off, but it was pouring rain. And, I would look into my child's eyes and just oh, no, we don't have to go, sort of thing. Whereas my husband would be, hey, no, you made a commitment. What if every single player on the team, wanted to give into their emotions today, wanted to give into their feelings? No. We'll have none of this. And off he took, let's say my son off to the soccer field, probably kicking and screaming. And thank God he did that, because it taught my son commitment, and that's what I mean. That's I hope you get an idea of what I'm talking about, in terms of, I'm not lesser than my husband for feeling this way. In fact, my husband probably loved me more for feeling this way. But he didn't let my feelings influence his decision, where I allowed my feelings to influence, let's say, the greater good of the child. where I would be more jellyfish type of parenting is what they would call now, or maybe, tender love versus the tough love of my husband. I was a teddy bear yeah, more of the teddy bear, and he was more like a fierce, right? But I mean, a woman will become a grizzly bear when it comes to her children. But you see what I mean? Like, that's the beauty of who she is. It's not a weakness. It's a weakness in certain instances, maybe where we need more of a rational, logical, like for the good of society, for the good of man, for the good of the family. We need our masculine parts of us to come out more, but we don't have to be masculine because we have a husband for that. So yeah, I mean, so that's just a little aside toward, in terms of what I'm getting at here, though. It's that this is such a beautiful passage from the Bible that both shows us our weaknesses, but also our strengths, especially when it comes to Mary. Because Mary now is the new Eve. God saw the weakness in Eve, in the garden, but now he's making a much stronger version of a woman, and as well, Joseph, her husband, a much stronger version of a man. These two, Joseph and Mary, become what we all need to be a version of in terms of what a man needs to be and what a woman needs to be. Now, I'm not going to talk about Joseph here. I'm going to speak towards Mary. But, Eve's fall in the garden, like I said, it was sort of the beginning of what God's statement was, that this is going to, in time, crush the head of Satan, but not by a sword, not by force, not by some sort of war or revolution or rebellion, but instead, Mary, with all of her humility, with her saying, thy will be done, when the angel Gabriel visited her, by submitting to the divine order with those words, let it be done unto me according to thy word. She didn't protest. She didn't second guess. She wasn't like, I don't know if this is a good idea. Like, I mean, I'm unwed and this is not going to look good. Are you sure? Like, no, in a second, thy will be done. Let me submiss to this, submit to it. Be submissive is what I'm trying to say. And that's the opposite of what we're taught right now as women in society. You go, girl, boss girl, you can do everything. And not only can you do everything, you can do it on your own. That's Satan talking. He wants you to be alone. He wants you to be without a husband, a man. He wants your child to not have a father figure in this world. Think about it. It's the truth. And this is what I mean about like my naivete, like, no, there's no evil in this world. It's all rainbows and butterflies and everyone's out for everyone else's good. And, that person wouldn't do that to me. My gosh, I need to do another podcast episode because this is another thing that I really want to speak about, and in terms of how women take advantage of other women's emotions. And it's awful. There's a lot of awful things going out on the internet right now. And I don't want to say the word victim to it. I guess I was a victim of Satan. I wasn't a victim of, what I signed up for, because I was obviously cognitive of it and I wasn't drugged into it or anything like that. It was my own decision. So I don't want to necessarily blame the person. I just want to talk to you maybe another time about what to be cautious of outside of your homes, because it is evil. 100%. And I see it so clearly now, but I was so delusioned before. So what is our modern, confusion that we have nowadays is that we live in a culture that has replaced sacred order with a lot of skepticism, a lot of, it's sort of like, it's sort of under the cloak of, as I said before, individualism. It's promoting all this idea of me, what I want, what I need. Can you imagine a mother raising her child like that? It's what I need? Like, my mother was the complete opposite of that. And like, she emulated Mary in so many different ways. And I'm sure your mother did as well when you think of it. All the sacrifices, if you look back, that your mother has made for you. That's a gift from God. That's a grace that we receive from God, to be able to sacrifice ourselves for our children. And we should be doing it more towards others as well, including our husbands. It's not a sign of weakness to if you want to use a word, submit, but this is just always taken out of like context so terribly. So I'm just so hesitant to use the word submit and to be in obedience. But I want you to take it in the context of how Mary answered God and her answer to the angel Gabriel when this was asked to her. Mary was an intelligent woman, and she knows the difference between submitting or being obedient to something that's evil and something that's through God. And you sort of know the difference, because one makes you feel anxious and fearful, while the other one knows that if you're doing good to another, when you're willing the good of another, that's love. And that is God. So when one is love and when one is evil. So feminism, especially in its latter waves, have taught women to question everything, to distrust, to fight for independence at all costs, and most dangerously, really, is to reject the idea of a God-ordained structure for the home. Because you do need a husband and a wife in a family. You do need both to raise your child. You shouldn't be alone, women. You're equal, but you're very different. You're equal in dignity. You're equal in what you can give to this family. I just talked to you about those differences, right? How the feminine and the masculine unite to be so powerful in one another. Like, go again back to Mary. She didn't demand equality. She accepted a divine calling, and it was beautiful. She didn't say, "What? Why me?" Or even the way that some women play themselves down so much. It's like I've seen that so much too. It's sort of, they have such low self-worth and low esteem. Mary didn't say, "Me? Humble me?" No. She didn't ask why me. She just said, "Fiat, thy will be done." There was no second guessing. And women need to be stronger in that way as well, and stop questioning themselves and stop questioning their self-worth. This has nothing to do with self-worth or your status or your wealth or anything like that. As you can see in the Bible, God often went to the most uneducated, peasants, in the Bible, whether that was, I can't remember exactly, but like Saint Teresa of Lisieux or Saint Catherine, or, Mary appeared to, poor desolate children all the time. It wasn't like some daughter of some queen, Jesus would appear to, or Mary would appear to, right? It's sort of, no, he had these intimate conversations with these saints that came from nothing. So why wouldn't you honor who you are just because you're a child of God, and for no other reason, and say yes to that? So let's make a little bit of a comparison between feminism versus Mary. The feminist movement told us that to be powerful, we must be in control. We need to hold on tightly to those reins and be in control, and that's why I think women have this tendency to always try to control many things, including our husbands, because that's what the feminists are telling us to do. And it's so against what God wants us to do. Scripture shows us that to be holy and truly influential, we must be in alignment. Alignment is so much more important. And what is alignment? We hear about that often nowadays. It's sort of like, oh yeah, be aligned towards your values and, stay in alignment. But what that is actually saying is that there is a sacred order. There's a sacred order to your home, and there's a sacred order, in nature. It's biological, really. I mean, it's the mother bird, staying back in the nest, caring for her babies. It's always the mother taking care of the babies. And I'm not saying that stay-at-home dads are bad, not at all. Bless their souls. But I've also seen it in relationships where, yes, the woman is the main provider of the home. And I don't think she set out to be that way, but in just like advancements in her work or whatever, she became the main provider, and nothing wrong with that. But I find it does affect men quite heavily. And depending on how strong their marriage is, it can take a turn for the worst. Because if he loses his masculinity in that, it can really go downhill quickly. So we can't neglect or turn away from the fact that there is a sacred order, a biological order. The male body is oriented towards protection, but not so much of the child, but more of the family. He's willing to take those risky jobs, like hanging off a building, or the police force, or the firefighters, or, there's a reason why there's more men doing those roles than women. And they are more pro-risk than women are. Women are a bit more risk aversive, and it's for a reason. They have more of that rational mind, as I spoke towards before, and more of a forward vision. What's good for the family? What's good for this child? And I was in the moment there with my son, right? It's sort of like he's hurting now, and I wanted to respond to that with the soccer. But my husband's looking 15 years into the future and kind of going, this kid's going to quit everything. He's not going to want to go to school. He's not going to want to show up on time in school. He's not going to show up on time for his work. He's not going to commit to a job. He's not going to commit to finishing high school. He's not going to commit to getting a future education or whatever. It's going to be, my feelings. I'm going to concave into my feelings. It doesn't feel good for me to go right now, and therefore I'm not going to go. Commitment is huge, especially in relationships. This is why we're having so many problems right now. No one wants to commit to it. Everybody wants to maybe test drive the relationship. Let's live together, for months or years, and maybe not marry at all. That's less risk adverse, right? I don't need to commit to anything that way. Or deciding not to have children. Ooh, that's a little scary. I'm going to play it safe and just not have children at all. That seems to be a lot easier. That feels easy. Why don't we do that instead? You guys, the female body is orientated towards nurture, intuition, connection, and response. A woman makes a wonderful, caring, compassionate person, and that's not even talking about how comforting. She makes a home. She beautifies a home. She makes it a haven to come home towards. And women, if you're not doing this, start doing it. Make your house a safe place. Bring in your feminine touch, your skills. Keep it orderly. Keep it clean. Show your love through the creation, your creativity in that aspect, as well as in what types of food you're putting on the table. Are you sitting down at the end of a hard day's work outside the home on the couch, scrolling through social media while a pre-made pizza is in the oven? Or the order to skip the dishes has been placed? Please don't do that. Your children are your legacy. Allow them to grow up with healthy minds and healthy bodies. Be the model of what you do, despite feeling tired, despite feeling angry, or whatever it is. You show up. You commit to the role that you took, to the vows that you made. That's what you need to do. You need to do what you ought to do, not what you feel or want to do, because of this divine order. Why should your home, which is really an icon of the domestic church, a model of the church, why would your home not be as ordered as the church is? Why would it be anything different? It was Mary's obedience that glorified her. Till the end of time. There's no other woman that's looked at with such adoration as our Blessed Mother is, till eternity. Is that a sign of oppression? It's not oppression. If she was oppressed, if she had to abide or do her duty, I don't think she would be held in such revelation right now. She's the opposite of oppression. This is the design of God. This is what it was always meant to be. Mary did not reign in heaven by competing with man. That's not how she got there. She's not the queen of heaven through competition with Joseph or controlling her son. That's not how she got there. She reigns in heaven right now because she knew her place in the kingdom. She knew her order, and she abided by it. She knew her place. And that place was beside God. How beautiful. Beside her son, in a role that changed all of history. So I hope you see how her obedience didn't diminish her. As I said over and over, it glorified her. And, I need to speak a little bit about the book of Revelation here too. Revelation shows Mary clothed with the sun, crowned like a queen, with a dragon waiting to devour her child. But the woman is preserved because her child, the Messiah, reigns. There's no doubt. He reigns. He conquered. He died, went down to the depths of evil, hell, and rose again. How much more can you show one conquering the world? He's been through it all, and he conquered death, and he saved our souls. So the dragon is defeated. This is how Mary appears. It's not just a vision. It's not just a painting that you might see. It's a blueprint. It's what is. It's not a fairy tale. It's, the Bible is not once upon a time in a land far, far away. That's not the Bible. The Bible is a true reiteration of what happened. There's no other book that's going to be a better teacher for us than the Bible. Jesus taught in parables, and his disciples took down and it is now put into a library of books, which is called the Bible. So, women, it's an important message. We cannot have peace in our homes or society until we once again restore the sacred order. It's something so important that we have to teach our daughters. please teach your daughter what this truly is. There's an order to be abided, and we have to stop listening to this feminine sort of push of you can do it all your own. You are so powerful. You do you. You deserve to be happy. It's leading someone to this idea of what happy is. But once they get there, they realize they've never felt so alone. And, because we get our pleasure through giving of ourselves to another. There's no way that we're going to have peace in our homes or society until we restore that sacred order. It begins by obeying God's will, not from our personal preference, not by our own weak will. We have to realize our will is so weak. Right, women? Put a piece of chocolate in front of us. That's all. That's a really, really great analogy of our weaknesses, Or, I don't know, doing something offensive against the law if that means protecting our child. We'll do anything to protect our child. We're weak in that way. Like I said, the example I gave with the soccer, we're so weak in that way. But if we always abide in God's will, this is how powerful we can be. And we need to look at Mary to show us that. Mary shows us that a woman's greatest power lies in her yes to God. And not by being louder, not by, controlling, but in loving, in trusting, and in building the kingdom from within. And that kingdom begins in the home. And I will again refer you to a past episode that I did with Carrie Gress, where she spoke about the theology of the home. And Carrie's doing a lot of great work in sort of bringing, defining what a woman is. Again, she is really restoring womanhood through faith and just kind of going back to tradition. It was episode 47, but some of you might get scared when you hear that word tradition, like it's Leave It to Beaver, June Cleaver, he's home. Like, once and for all, just get that out of your heads. I mean, hey, but then again, there is something beautiful in that. Just like there is with the Simpsons, they're a bit of a mess. But one thing you got to say about them is that they went to church every Sunday, And Carrie also talked about that, the importance of the Sabbath, taking time out, in your Sunday, giving your body rest, women, the family being together. And again, bringing order back into the home by just saying, you know what, we're going to practice, a couple hours every Sunday of not being on our phones, not being on our screens. And everybody in the family is going to do this, if that means everybody in the family is going to maybe cook together, clean together. I don't mean like the Sabbath and day of rest. Like, to me, cleaning together would be a form of rest in that, we're beautifying the home. I don't see that as hard work, putting the home in order, cleaning out your closet, having your kids clean out their closets or whatever. If everybody sort of does it together, I see that as sacred in its own ways. So yeah, again, let's bring it back to this beautiful woman that we have, Mary, as our icon, our emblem of what a woman was always meant to be. She shows us that a woman's greatest power lies in her yes, her fiat, and never competing with her husband, not being louder, not being controlling, but instead by loving, just loving despite not liking your partner on a certain day or your child, but trusting and building the kingdom from within, meaning order, structure in the home. That kingdom begins in the home, everyone. So let's just close with the quote. And that quote is, fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum. Let it be done unto me according to thy word. That was my meek attempt at Latin. Fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum. That's from Luke chapter 1, verse 38. Mary crushed Satan not by force, but by trust. And can we do the same? Will we decide to do the same? That's the question. Hope this was helpful for you, and I trust that it is. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember that you can watch the full episode on YouTube, where I plan to hang out the most. Your feedback and suggestions for future guests are incredibly valuable to me, so please don't hesitate to post a comment. You are an integral part of this journey.